Welcome back to another episode of Re-Correlated Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Natalie Baker, and we have Mac Wartenberger back with us this week as one of our hosts. Jules is on vacation, so she might be in the comments. We're keeping an eye on the comments this week because I always forget, but I do have those up this week. And of course, we have our wonderful special guest, Dana Williams, joining us today. Dana, currently you're an offensive security team lead at Densely Serona. Before that, like you've just worked through IT all the way up to where you're at now, basically. You come from the local central Pennsylvania area as well. And, you know, you're just like an all around like local cybersecurity like leader, part of the leading of the grassroots movement. So any more you want to kind of give yourself a little bit more of an introduction, feel free to.
Yeah, no, I that's pretty accurate. My work history is definitely started with small help desk positions, and I was at Metro Bank, which was a very central Pennsylvania centric bank. Up until they were bought out, I was working on their help desk, and I went to the Department of Revenue. It was my first actual security position. And then I took a position at Densely as a security analyst. So I kind of learned the blue team side of things, you know, how to do defense, IOC research, that kind of thing. And then the lovely Log4j hit in December 9th. And then it was really realized that we needed a full-time vulnerability management person. I was doing it every quarter. I was doing the scans. It was really at that point said, oh, this is huge. We need to be able to have someone dedicated to that. And then that's when I moved into that role, earned my CISSP, which gave my director the ammunition to actually promote me in title to the team lead.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah. Dana's actually the one that vouched for me on my
absolutely.
So
knew your whole IT career. So
no, not my whole IT career, but close to it. Close.
Most of it, you know.
Yeah, at least half of it. Yeah.
But we do love the IT into security journey. It's such a, I think we're seeing some of the best security practitioners come out now with that kind of background. You know how all the things work, then you know how to secure them.
Yeah, it's very, very important to have that kind of knowledge going in, because you do understand systems a little bit differently. I do have a junior, and sometimes it's difficult to get into the weeds with that kind of thing because like you don't have that same background. So you have to go back and step back and say, hold on, you got 8 years in IT, but you never went through those beginning steps. I'm like, hold on, we got to go back. So do you understand what this is? Yes. Okay. Now we can move forward. So, yeah, getting that good baseline is very, very good for the field.
Yeah, I would agree. So anyway, today we are here to chat about starting and founding, like the behind the scenes of how you founded and started a cybersecurity conference, how others can kind of start their own cybersecurity conference, why you chose to go with BSides, how the idea kind of started. So like, I guess my hot take would be to know how the idea kind of came about for BSides Harrisburg, because like, obviously, we want people to make sure go buy your tickets for BSides if you haven't already. April 24th, boom. But how did that idea kind of come about? That would be one of my hot takes. Mac, Dana, what are your hot takes on this topic?
So I can't take credit for the original BSides Harrisburg. We started in 2019, and that was really started by a gentleman named Brandon Keith.
Yep, he's been on this before.
You know Brandon. And that took place at Harrisburg University. He was working there part-time, so it just kind of like everything kind of meshed. Brandon was very big in the local cybersecurity, still is, but very big in the local cybersecurity and conferences. So he's the one who came up with the, hey, let's start a BSides in Harrisburg. He'd gone to Philly, he's gone to Delaware, just around through other local BSides, and wanted to bring one here. And at the time, he was, I guess, president, for lack of a better term, of our local hacking group, PA Hackers, which is where I met him. And so we already had a very good cybersecurity base in the area. So like I said, he went to Harrisburg University and said, hey, I want to do this. They helped put it on. And so,
and I believe he was teaching adjunctly there for a little bit too, right?
He was
at that point. So that kind of helped with like that relationship a little bit of getting that as our venue that first year.
It absolutely helped because not only was he helping with the cybersecurity program, he could then, preach that and say, hey, the cybersecurity program, there's going to be a lot of students, a lot of potential students. We can bring that to Harrisburg University, have enrollments and stuff. And then obviously COVID happened in 2020. So BSides 2020 was canceled. And 21 was canceled. And then the idea just kind of fell off into obscurity. And then a gentleman, Floyd Roddery, and I were at Checkpoint Happy Hour. Checkpoint does a happy hour in Enola, second Wednesday of every month, just to have camaraderie with other cybersecurity professionals in the area. And this was in 2022, July, August 2022. We were sitting there talking, like, we should really bring BSides back. Okay, well, how do we do that? So we reached out. We talked to Brandon and said, okay, how did you do this? And he's like, we went through Harrisburg University, was a major player because they already had a lot of contacts. Because they did a cybersecurity conference. So they already had vendors and sponsors that they could easily just bring in. So we were like, okay, how then do we actually do this? How do you start a nonprofit to do this? And we went through a lot of the back and forth on, should we do our own? That's a lot of paperwork. And you have to have a board of directors and you have to do tax commitments and things like that. So then we reached out to the Hack Foundation, which is an organization out in California that helps. It's mainly for students, but it's also for technology-related organizations to do projects. And they said, yes, we will sponsor you. They set up a bank account for us and gave us their 501c3 status. So we are a actual registered 501c3.
Nice.
Yeah, and that opened a lot of doors too, because then you could go to sponsors and say, hey, if you're going to a conference and you're paying $3,600 for a table, well, give us $1,000, and because we are a nonprofit, you can write that off then. Oh, cool. Okay, so it's a win-win for us. So we started approaching sponsors, and that is incredibly difficult when you don't when you don't have like a current relationship with a company. Then you say, hey, Akamai, give us money, and they go, who are you? So our first year, it was a smashing success, but it was really a struggle because we didn't know exactly what we were doing. We didn't want to go back to Harrisburg University because we didn't want it to be Harrisburg University presents BSides Harrisburg. We wanted to be BSides Harrisburg. We wanted to be our own entity. We wanted to be able to grow. So we decided to do just that. We put it on, went and found a venue. Our first year was at the Best Western off of Route 83 in Harrisburg. And
yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah.
It was the first year that we had the Hacker Village, though.
It
so
was.
Like, even though you guys didn't like have a whole lot like funding wise, you had like one or two main sponsors. Like you still were able to put on a pretty decent like BSides conference with the Hacker Village and all that.
We did. Our first year, it really was. I'm going to give a huge credit to Scott Davis, because he approached me. He had a check written out specifically for a nonprofit. And he said, you have to be a 501c3. I've got $4,500 I can give you, but you have to. And he said, yeah, here we go. Here's our EIN. We wrote off that check and we're like, we have a nest egg. So we ended our first year with, I want to say 8 sponsors.
Nice.
A couple nonprofits, but we did not have a huge bankroll at the time, and we managed to put it off. We had 189 people in attendance, 8 paying sponsors. I think 3 of them were at the $2,000 or $2,500 level. So we had some that really did pay a good sponsorship amount, and some of them were like, look, we can give you $250. Okay, we'll do that.
We'll take what we can. Yep.
Yeah. So at that point, we're trying to grow. We want to foster these relationships, and some of those companies are now what we consider our partners. We go to JFC and say, hey, JFC, you were there our first year, you're there our second year. You want to come back our third year? And they're like, yeah, we were just waiting on you. We're waiting on you to come talk to us. So we now have those kind of relationships where the people are starting to put money aside specifically for BSides, and it's a wonderful thing.
So what I think is really cool about this story, Dana, just to jump in, is this kind of truly grassroots growth, going from 8 sponsors just trying to make it work to now you've got folks that are dog-earing funds, people that are looking forward to this event. We've got amazing speakers like Natalie lined up. Natalie, we should see if we can find a link to this and drop it in chat. That would be perfect for tickets for people in y'all's area that can go. Before you got into kind of the origin story, my hot take was conferences can get kind of a bad name. Everyone thinks about like Hacker Summer Camp and going to Vegas and spending, $10,000 to essentially move there. But BSides represents this kind of anti-Hacker Summer Camp, anti-RSA, anti-DEF CON. It is this hyper-regional, really grassroots approach that really, and you just gave us this incredible cross-section view of it's a couple passionate people that feel like this should happen, and it can spin up. I think that's kind of the magic of BSides in particular. Can you just kind of touch on that quickly, like for some of our folks that might be watching that might not be as familiar with this conference or even BSides in general? Like, I think the national movement of regional BSides represents something really cool. Can you get into that with us just a little bit?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit of background on what BSides is. BSides started at DEF CON Las Vegas as a...
No offense, DEF CON people.
It started really as we have too many speakers with really good talks. We need something so that they can talk to. And one of our biggest bylaws for being a BSides is it can't be commercialized. We need sponsors. We need sponsors desperately in order to put this on. But what you won't find at a BSides is someone from Tenable going up on stage and saying, hey, I have a talk about our new product. Yeah, we might have a speaker from Tenable talking about the vulnerability management space, but not their product. So it's a very welcoming, it's not commercial, it's not preachy. We have people who say, hey, this is my area of expertise and I want to share that. They get to talk. And it's really about the people. It's about networking and talking about the different ideas in cybersecurity and the different experiences people have. Like I said, I've gone to BSides all over the East Coast, and it's really awesome to see my experience as someone working in the central Pennsylvania area in the manufacturing space, going down to someplace like Charlotte or to Raleigh or out to Dayton, Ohio, and running into people who work in a different field but understand where I see things and I can understand how they see things, and being able to say, we're hundreds of miles apart, but we're all seeing the same things in cyber. And how did you handle this situation? This is how I handled the situation. That's a great way to do that. I've never thought to do it that way. There have been times where I've come back from a BSides and talked to my boss and said, hey, when I was down there, I talked to this one person and they had this same problem that we have. I think they went about it in a really good way. Can we implement something like that? And we'll try it. And we're like, hey, this is working. So it really is, like you said, a small grassroots, small area. This isn't like RSA. This isn't a massive conference where, you got people from all over spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to put this thing on. We try to keep our tickets to something that's reasonable, that we can support the conference. Our tickets this year are $40. I can tell you where every dollar of that $40 goes.
Yeah.
Our catering budget runs almost $30 a person. So, your ticket's buying you your lunch, your food.
And your shirt.
And your shirt, if your shirt's not included this year.
Oh, okay.
Because we end up with buying way too many.
Too many, yeah.
And then we'll have, too much. But the shirts are an option. But yeah, really the ticket is that's our attendee cost. You're covering the attendee cost.
Which removes a barrier for attendees. One, they're regional. So I guarantee you've got a BSides close to you. They're less expensive, but they're also less intimidating, right?
Yes,
absolutely. I would really have to mentally and emotionally gear up to go to one of these megacons, to go to reInvent. BSides, you're going to meet people in your, it sounds cliche, but in your neighborhood. And that's a really cool feature of this too.
It really, really is. I go to Towson every year, and I've been a big fan of a certain YouTube personality who is a malware analyst for Huntress. Don't know if you know who I'm referring to. John. And he was down there, and I didn't know he was a local guy. And I was like, oh my gosh, I watched your videos. And one of the guys who's an organizer for Towson, for BSides Charm, lives in Carlisle. He's a neighbor of mine, in the Harrisburg area. So you really do get to see a lot of, not necessarily the same people, but it is our community. You recognize people. You get to see, people, and you start to become friends with people too. As you get to know them from seeing them. There's a guy who I've seen at 4 different BSides. Awesome. I don't know his name because I'm usually he does a lot of the CTFs, but it's I've recognized him from other BSides. So you get to see a lot of the same people. And yeah, it's really is just a smaller community thing. And we try to keep it that way. Yeah, we love growth. This year we are anticipating to be much bigger than we were last year. But that just means that people are getting aware. In this local area, people are getting aware. And you're right, it's not intimidating. We have people who we welcome, one of our things is you don't have to be in cybersecurity. You don't even have to be in IT. If you're just curious, by all means, come along. I've seen fathers and mothers bring their kids to a BSides. Awesome. You wouldn't see that at DEF CON.
No.
Probably, hopefully not. You wouldn't see someone bringing their 8-year-old to a hacker convention. But I was down in Charlotte, and this young boy walked up to me and he said, "Well, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I work on the red team. I do vulnerability management and pen testing." And he's like, "Oh, that's really cool." He's writing stuff down in a notebook, and he walks over to his dad and he says, "Dad, this is what this guy does." And I was like, "That's awesome." He's talking to everybody, and it really is that kind of experience where you're just comfortable talking to people.
Well, and you get more of those technical topics too that, like you said, they're not based on a tool. Like
Yes.
At every other conference that you go to, you have people shoving their tool down your throat, and you're like, I don't want to sign your email registry list to get a t-shirt. I'm cool. Keep your t-shirt. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah.
Only if you give me also a really cool tumbler to go with that t-shirt. The only exception is Nerdio swag. I definitely would have signed everything for Nerdio swag. And I'm pretty sure people would probably be signing for the Aqua Frisbees that we have for dogs.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we as a BSides, another one of our big things is we are not allowed to sell your information at all. That's
huge.
Yeah. Our attendees are there to learn. They're not there to be harvested for data. Sponsors, if they want to do lead generation, absolutely do lead generation. Talk to the people walking around. We've had sponsors leave early because they ran out of swag. They're like, we have 90 business cards. We're out of swag. And that's really good to see, because then it's hey, their marketing department's going to be happy. So
well, and year 3, you guys sold out your venue. Let's just make that very loud and clear. Year 3 of being a BSides, you sold out your venue altogether. So you had to move to a bigger venue this past year.
Absolutely.
How did that happen? How do you go from 100 odd in 3 years to selling out a venue? What did you do?
Really, it was organic growth. We brought in a couple more organizers who had some reach, who had social media presence, and a couple more organizers who had connections in other places, and just let things grow. So when we were at the Best Western, the rooms that we rented had a maximum capacity of 300 people. And at 0 hour, I remember we were sitting at the sponsor dinner. I was talking to Floyd, and he got an alert on his phone that the last ticket was sold. And it was 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, the night before. It was oh my God, we did it. And we had 224 ticket check-ins, 260 something people actually in attendance, and that includes the volunteers, because obviously they aren't ticket checking. And we had multiple people come in day of saying, "Hey, I tried to get a ticket, but it's sold out. Can I get in?" So obviously we can't count that as a ticket sale because there was no way to sell a ticket. But yeah, we sold out, absolutely. So we had to move to a bigger venue.
So when it comes to speaking, getting speakers in, I know that was a problem when it was first starting out in Harrisburg, and now, I mean, this year you guys had an abundance of like applications, right? So like, how do you kind of go through, not like telling us your methodology of how you going to go through, but like, how do you figure out which speeches are going to be most relevant, and how do you like go about that thought process?
Yeah. So our first year, I hate to say I'm going to refer to our first year as 2023, because I was not involved in 2019. So our first year, I believe we had 15 speaker applications for 10 speaker slots. So it was kind of easy to say, hold on, this person wants to speak, but they're located in Texas. So we can kind of say, why don't we give a local person? And so we were able to whittle things down like that fairly easily. We typically, at least from my methodology, I typically bias towards first-time speakers. And is this talk relevant to cybersecurity right now? You're going to see a lot of AI talks. We try to limit the number of AI talks just because it is such a big topic. We don't want everyone talking about it. But if it's something that can be applied to things happening right now, they're going to kind of get bumped up over some other talks. And this year we had almost 60 papers to sift through.
Wow.
And sort out, and that was extraordinarily difficult. It took hours and hours to actually come down to our final, I think, 15 talks. This year we're having multiple tracks and talks in some of the career villages as well, and a lunchtime talk. We're actually having a panel talk over lunch. So we have, and it was very difficult.
Yeah, that sounds like pulling teeth. I want to direct something.
Sure.
Dana, we've got you here. You're actively selecting these, and Natalie, you've been selected to speak at BSides Harrisburg. I love the bias, the preference for first-time speakers. There's a lot of folks out there that have attended BSides, that have attended conferences, that are passionate about topics, but maybe haven't ever spoken. And BSides is kind of the perfect arena for that.
It is.
As someone that goes through those CFPs, and as someone that has successfully presented several times and submitted these CFPs, what are you looking for, Dana? And what are some hot takes that you guys can give the folks that might be listening about, hey, I might have a topic that I want to present on, but I haven't done this before. What do they need to do to get on stage? Aside from bribery, of course,
Besides bribery, yes. The biggest thing is, and it's going to sound bad, but make it interesting. I have sat through plenty of talks as an organizer, as a founder, not at my BSides, at other BSides, and I go, what were the other choices if this one got picked? Where it's like a programmer is talking about assembly code, and you're like, you are talking to a very niche audience at this point, not the community at large. If you have a talk, if you have an idea for a talk, can you present it to someone like a 6-year-old and make them sit down and go, oh, this is really interesting. I want to learn more about this. If you can't bring it down to that level of getting someone who has no interest in it, like a 6-year-old would, to say, oh, this is interesting, work on it so that you can. Because, not to say that our audience is 6-year-olds, but you're talking to going to be talking to 100, 150 people who you don't know what their background is. Are they students? Are they in IT? Is this something that they want to learn more about? Is this something that is just a passing interest? Did the topic sound interesting? And they're going to sit there and they're going to listen. But if you're overly technical with something and you can't use the big words or the small words and bring it home, work on that. Make it so that it's grabby, it's catchy. I've sat through some talks where I left going, wow, that was awesome. How they brought in things like the Enigma machine from World War II and related that to modern encryption. And they didn't talk about it like someone had to know what this was. They brought in the general idea of what is encryption and how it came to be. Make sure if you have an idea for a talk, just make it interesting. Make it easy to understand. Make it easy to follow.
Yeah, that's always been one of my requirements whenever I'm going to submit a CFP as well, is like, am I going to be interested at the end of this talk, or am I going to be bored with this topic by the time it's over? And if I'm going to be bored with it, then is it really worthwhile of me submitting a CFP or not? And sometimes I will submit just to see, like, I mean, if they only have, 15 presentations that are submitted and they have like 10, left, then they have 10 spots, then you might get a spot. You never know. But and then the other piece is like, leaders, tell your people about these opportunities with like, local BSides, like get them interested in going to those topics. And if you don't present your first year, that's okay. Like, go watch your first year, see what topics people are interested in, see if you get any ideas sparked from that BSides that maybe you can present on next year at the next BSides. You never know where your ideas are going to come from. But leaders, tell your juniors about these events and also encourage them to go speak at them, because the only reason I spoke at my first BSides was because Brandon Keith said you should submit a proposal for this BSides. And I said, like, speaking in public? And he was like, yes. And I was like, are you sure?
You really want me to do that?
Are you sure?
Well, and that is a huge barrier, right? Like, I think a lot of people, getting in front of a group of strangers on stage and speaking in public is like up there on people's worst nightmares, right? It's it's the thing that we have when we're having anxiety dreams. So again, as someone that speaks and someone that sees a lot of speakers and brings them in, what would the message to people that are maybe hesitant to submit CFPs be if they're hesitant?
You don't need to be a subject matter expert. You just have to have experience doing what you want to talk about, because that is your experience and your experience was true. So, if I was going to talk on vulnerability management, I'm not an expert on it, but I know what my experience is, and I can talk on my experience because I'm an expert on what I've experienced. So yeah, you don't have to be a field expert. You don't have to have 10 years behind you. You don't have to have a wall full of plaques and certificates. If you want to take your first year working on a SOC and say, what did I learn my first year working on a SOC? Or my worst day as a SOC analyst, I'm sitting for that one. Because that's going to be.
I want to hear that tea.
Yeah.
I want to hear the tea.
But that's awesome to hear, Dana, because I think a lot of people feel like if they haven't invented some new innovative technique, or they haven't solved some, Gordian knot issue, that they don't have something they can speak to. And in fact, like the my worst day on a SOC, like, sign me up. I'd travel for that one. Like, I'd love to hear that. But I think there is this conception that like you have to be a V12 super stud developer that's done something really incredible. And those talks are also amazing. But you don't have to be that to give a great presentation.
Absolutely. We have had high profile people talk, and they've been some really interesting talks. And then we've had some people come in and say, hey, this is my first year. This is my first talk. This is what I learned after my first year on the job. And it's like, oh man, I've been through something like that. And then you get to talking to the speaker afterwards, and you find out, hey, this is, a common theme, and you find more things in common, and you get to grow networks, and you get to grow experience and knowledge, and it's really a wonderful thing. And yeah, so you don't have to be the expert in the room. Just talk on what you know.
Yeah, and if all else fails, you can always spin up a project, a side project at work, and then just use that as like your research that you did, because that's what mine was. That is also very much an option of doing, is like spinning up a research project that you can kind of like double dip into it.
Yeah, we have had people talk on their open source projects. We've had people talk on, big research projects that they've been part of. And, it's all just really awesome stuff, because at the end of the day, they're just normal people. They go to work same as I do.
So what is next? Obviously you've sold out your small venue, you've got a new bigger venue, you're bringing in rock star speakers like Miss Baker here. What's the vision for BSides Harrisburg? What's the plan for this year? And then what are you looking ahead in kind of the short term, near term future for this con? And how do you guide that? How do you choose that as someone that runs this, if we're not talking specifically Harrisburg, in general?
So the venue we have moved to, we're never going to outgrow, thankfully. We moved to the Farm Show Complex. And
fingers crossed.
Well, if we sell 1,000,
it would have to get huge. It would have to get huge to outgrow it, but
yeah. But yeah, so our at least my vision is to keep it growing organically as much as we can, and keep it there, keep it home. I feel like we have found a home for it, and make it so that it's something that the local community looks forward to every year. And, have it so that we are giving back to the community, having those first time speakers come in, and then the second time speaker, and then they're the third time speaker. And then, hey, I remember you from, 3 years ago. Hey, what are you talking on this year? And having people come up and say, hey, I just want to, and this has actually happened. Thank you guys, because I was here last year and I ran into someone and was talking to them, and I ended up getting a job because of them.
That's the most awesome.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it's like trying to get into the industry, and cybersecurity is so hard to get into.
Yes, it is.
It really is. It shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. We should be looking at the people who have the desire and the drive to get into cyber, and hiring a lot more people than we have. We need people.
I like the idea of a BSides as your first screen for security hiring. That's pretty awesome. If you've got the skin in the game to put some cash down and show up in person and listen to talks, that's your first screener. You've struck on something kind of innovative there, Dana. I like it.
Yeah, it was really cool to see. They said they came back and they were like, hey, I was here last year and talked to this person, and ended up, changing resumes. And they said, we've got an entry level on this position. It's like, and everything just worked out. It's like, that's amazing to hear those kinds of stories. So, we want to, BSides Harrisburg wants to be that. We want to be that place where people are comfortable to do make those kinds of connections. Talk to people that they wouldn't normally talk to. And good things have happened,
That's awesome.
That's where we are. That's where we want to be. We want to grow. I don't know how big we want to get. Philly was 550 people this year. Pittsburgh's over 1,000. Yeah. Towson was about 1,000. BSides Charm is about 1,000. So us having 300 to 400 to 500 people, I would be happy with that. Personally, I would be happy with that. I think that would be a good sampling of the local area.
Now, I know, and Natalie, you mentioned there's a you've got a couple villages set up. Like, how about programming? Do you have any big goals for the future?
We normally just keep it kind of simple. We give a lockpick village that is put on by a local makerspace. Keystone Makers is putting on our lockpick village this year. We have a CTF. People always ask about, how do I get involved in being the hacker? Want to be the hacker? Do CTFs. It's the easiest way. That's how you learn. So we have that. We also have a career village, which is, I feel, one of the best things that we've brought in, because we're going to have, JFC is going to be there. We're going to have other companies who are recruiting there. You're getting right in front of your target audience too. People coming in and saying, hey, I've been on the SOC, or I've been on the help desk. I want to move into network administration, system administration, cybersecurity. Do you have anything? There's going to be companies that are going to be like, absolutely. And hey, we're in Hershey, we're in Harrisburg, we're in York. Local to people. And instead of scrolling through the endless parade of LinkedIn jobs, you're talking to people who are going to be hiring. So, that's another big thing that we have, that I would love us to continue doing. There was a very good talk given last year about figuring out what your path is in IT. Where do you want your career to go? And it really did help, I think, a lot of people understand that you talk cybersecurity, you're not just talking hackers. You're talking about the defenders. You're talking about people in compliance. You're talking about auditors. There's
people you run away from.
Whole just, people are like, well, I'm not technical enough to be a hacker. Okay, well, you don't have to be. You want to work in cybersecurity?
Policy.
Yeah, do policy stuff. GRC, yay, GRC.
Run.
No, yeah, come on.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was gonna say GRC queen over here. Love it.
But there's so much to cybersecurity that people don't really realize, because they think cybersecurity, I've seen Mr. Robot. That's what cybersecurity is. Well, part of it.
It's one faction of it.
Yeah. Cybersecurity is also network security. It's
development security.
Firewalls, making sure routers are set up correctly, that network administration, that's part of cybersecurity too. So there's so many things that people don't realize, and you'll say something like, oh, well, I like doing networking. Well, there you go. So
so let's talk about, we've talked about how important sponsors are for you, but how important it also is to get volunteers for these events, because the event runs by having volunteers. I know you guys are still looking for volunteers as well. So if anybody wants to go and volunteer for BSides, but go ahead and highlight a little bit about what your take is on if somebody, maybe what's one of the benefits of being a volunteer, and then what's the difference between being a volunteer versus just attending? Do you like let people have like certain hours off where they can just go and sit and watch talks? How does that kind of work for them?
So when you volunteer, you get kind of the behind the scenes on how things work, which is always nice because you might not want to start your own cybersecurity conference. It's not for everybody. But maybe you are in school and you want to know how to organize an event. Well, here you can volunteer and learn how to organize an event. Try as we might, the organizers, Floyd and I, cannot run this thing ourselves. There's only 8 of us. Cloning, not quite a good idea yet. So 40, 50 volunteers that help collect tickets. They help direct people. They give information. They are our keystones on the day of the event. The volunteers are massively important. And usually we run like 2 or 3 hours, and then your shift is over. You can go sit in talks, or even go do a talk. We've had volunteers who were also speakers. So
that was going to be my next question, Dana.
But so volunteering, you get to see the behind the scenes on what does it take the day of to get one of these events going. And like I said, maybe you don't want to start a conference, but maybe you want to know, what do you need to do to do an event of your own?
Well, maybe you don't want to start a conference yet, but maybe one day you kind of are at a place in your career to where you are needing to have a conference because you have your own company, and having that like behind the scenes kind of helps you in that growth trajectory as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's really no better way to learn how to manage, prioritize, delegate better than
in the middle of chaos.
Yeah, exactly.
Chaos is.
Pressure makes diamonds.
It's great SOC training, man. Great incident responder training right there. Just go volunteer to BSides.
It's fantastically stressful, but it's a good thing.
What will you be the most excited about when it goes right at this year's event, Dana? What's always the big sticking point?
This is going to sound but making sure the bills are paid.
Sure.
Because I know that the talks are going to be awesome. I know that the attendees are going to have a great time. My biggest stress, and what I will celebrate the most, is when we can say, hey, we have successfully put this on. If we beat last year's attendance numbers, if we beat, last year's feedback numbers, and say, hey, definitely we'll be back. If we have those sponsors also right, absolutely going to be back. That to me that's what I'm going to be celebrating, is the success. And I don't want to see it fail. No one does, but we have grown year over year, and it's going to be awesome if we beat last year's numbers, which we are projected to. We are at about 150 tickets sold. We were at 160 some odd tickets 2 weeks out last year, and we're 5 weeks out and have almost that number. So
nice.
Yeah, we are getting there.
That's awesome.
So we may have already discussed this a little bit, but like kind of going into like how building that momentum year to year to year, how do you kind of keep that sustained? Or are you just like kind of hoping that every year that people just show up and come to BSides every year?
We do hope that people just kind of show up, but doing things like reposting, our social media, being involved in social media, talking to other BSides organizations, helping get the word out. We go to other BSides. We talk to them too, and we're all a little community in this area. I go to Pittsburgh, Philly, Charm, even down to Raleigh. And you talk to the other BSides, and they talk to other people, and they talk to other people. So you get the word of mouth spread, and then you talk to companies who they might be sponsoring, but they're also like, hey, yeah, we're going to sponsor, but we're also going to send five people. And that's also big, because then those companies also reach out. We have one sponsor who just loves doing that.
I think I know which one.
It's not just Appalachia, actually. Optiv is one of our other sponsors, and
Awesome.
Our point of contact, he talks to the companies that they work with and says, hey, your cybersecurity department, we sponsor this conference. Why don't you send some people? And that helps too.
Awesome.
So yeah, we do hope that people just kind of show up, but it is a lot of talking to people, spreading the word, and trying to reach more people than we reached last year.
Yeah. So speakers, make sure that you are sharing those posts with your network as they are coming out about your speaking engagement. That way people know to come and see you at BSides Harrisburg, because we want it to grow. We want it to be successful.
And if you didn't get picked, still
We'll share it anyway.
Yeah, talk to your cybersecurity department or your IT department and say, hey, come to this. I could get picked next year. I'm going to put in another talk. I can get picked.
Yeah, and you might learn something new at this BSides that you wouldn't have learned just if you were. I've attended numerous times before where it was like, I didn't have anything to submit, but I still went and attended, because it is important, and you do learn things from other people out there that are doing different facets of cybersecurity, because it's such a big, large pool that we like to place everybody in. But it's like, okay, well, there's different facets of it that are very kind of separated, and you don't get to see what a DevSecOps type of person would look for in security versus what you're looking for in security as a network architect or whatnot. So
Totally. And maybe it being a smaller, bite-sized approach, you can certainly do that at RSA, but maybe easier to do that in a room of 300 to 500 people as opposed to in a room of 3,000 to 5,000 people. I think all of us tend to get a little like, oh my God, this is huge. So if you can ease your way into that, and maybe instead of going to one huge conference where there's a huge burden, maybe you go to 3 of these things. Maybe you travel around your region a little bit, and Dana, to your point, you meet some folks and it gets comfortable, and Natalie, to your point, you're reaching out and you're connecting with people that work in IT, that work in security, but don't do exactly what you do. And you walk away from these more grassroots, more community-oriented opportunities with better takeaways.
Yeah, because you're talking to the exact same person doing a similar job to you in a different place, and you're getting different ideas on how to approach a problem that you've probably faced, or like in Natalie's case, working in the policy and compliance area, talking to someone being like, oh, well, I understand, these regulations this way. How are, and you're implementing them this way. Well, that still fits. That's a really cool way of doing that. The next time I have a client who has a similar situation, I can look at that and say, hey, I know about this.
Yeah, maybe our solution doesn't necessarily work that we have, but maybe we can curtail one to your specifications or your needs, that kind of ordeal. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So, are we ready for final takeaways, or do you have more? What else do you want to talk about, Dana? What else did I not ask you that you want me to ask you?
I don't know. I think it's gone pretty well. I've got good I've got good hope for this year that we're gonna keep growing, and it's gonna be an awesome time.
I think so too. Mac, do you have any final questions before we hop into final takeaways?
I'm good. Dana, you've given us a great breakdown.
All right. So final takeaways. Go ahead, Mac.
Support local. You know, it's not just for the food stand anymore. I mean, I'm ready to roll. I think the idea of something, like I just said, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more achievable, that lets you get your hands dirty and puts you in a space where you feel like you're ready to engage a bit more, as opposed to one of these major big name conferences, I think could be a really good route for a lot of different people to see all the breadth and depth of this industry. Mm-hmm. Natalie?
Dana, what's your final takeaways?
Support BSides. There's going to be one near you. There's been over 1,000 globally. There's going to be one near you in a city, in a state near you. And don't just go to one, go to a bunch, because you never know what ideas you're going to walk away with, who you're going to meet, who you're going to talk to, what presentations you're going to see, what ideas you're going to have going back. And then, you know, you're going to be able to grow in your career, in your field, in just your ideas, and support the local BSides. Support all the BSides, all of them.
Every single one of them.
Everyone.
Them all. You can afford it. You can. I promise. I, obviously go buy your BSides Harrisburg tickets. That's one of my final takeaways. But again, yes, don't be afraid of submitting for BSides. Even if you are a brand new speaker, you've never done a speaking engagement. My first speaking engagement was at BSides. And like Max said, it is 10 times less scary when there are people that you see, especially if you're working in a local, like your local area. Like for me now, I'm not working within the local cybersecurity community as much as I was for like Central PA, but I mean, I can bring big ideas back from like what I've seen working on like the federal level or whatnot, and kind of bring those insights in too. So make sure you go buy your BSides tickets, volunteer if you want to go to BSides, and you absolutely, I don't know, volunteers get free tickets, like free attendance. Yep. So if you absolutely are like, I can't afford the ticket price, go volunteer, go be a volunteer, go work for a few hours and then go see a few talks. Go help out your BSides. And lastly, sponsor BSides.
Yes.
If you want to help out, I know I've shared links for BSides Harrisburg. I know there are plenty of other BSides out there. Help sponsor a BSides if you're in the position to, because these are the kind of talks where these are the conferences that I as somebody who, has done a few speaking engagements in my time now. I just have so much passion for those specific conferences because they do get very technical. You don't really, every single talk you go to, you're going to take something away from it, regardless of what the talk is. So if you're in that position to where you're able to sponsor a BSides, sponsor a BSides. Those are my key takeaways. Well, I guess that is all for this episode. So hope you all have a great time, and we will see you back here in a couple weeks. Have a good one.
Good luck, Dana.